Today by giving you a thought that may seem a little backwards or opposite of how the mainstream Medicare market flows or thinks. Here's the thought. Not all Medigap rate increases are bad. Now, that's very selective. And in fact, I would go as far to say some rate increases are actually a sign of a healthy, stable, growing block of business. Let me explain what I mean. This is Ansall, probably going to be about a 5-minute Medicare minute. So when most agents or consumers see a rate increase, the immediate reaction is, this carrier's getting expensive. I better roll my block of business. Or if you're a member, I better shop around and try and find something else. This is clear that something has to be wrong with this carrier. And to be fair, there are times when that is absolutely true and absolutely correct, but it is not always. Rate increases aren't just about prices going up over time. They're really more about how well is this carrier managing their underlying block or blocks of business or pools of business. So if you take a step back with me, when a Medicare supplement carrier prices a plan, they're making a long-term assumption, right? And the assumptions are about the claims that are going to be on that open or closed pool of business, the morbidity of it, their lapse rates, their trends, and the entire block's composition. Essentially, what they're saying is that if everything behaves as expected, this block should perform at a certain level over time. And usually you're going to find that in the trend percentage when you're looking at a filing. But the reality is, blocks don't always behave perfectly. No one saw COVID coming in the Medicare sphere, right? So if we think about the different types of business that go into a Medicare supplement block, we have underwritten business, which tends to be and should be the healthiest business that you get. And then open enrollment business, which actually runs slightly worse than expected over the course of a block. And then GI business, and that absolutely runs significantly worse than underwritten business. So the mix then of a carrier's block of business matters more than people realize. So now let's transition into where the rate increases come in then. If a carrier is watching their block closely and they're adamant about forecasting what's in the market and what's to come, then they're able to see that claims might be trending slightly higher than they thought, or their mix of business is shifting, or the morbidity claims are creeping up. And then they can make measured incremental adjustments to offset high medical loss ratios. And that's really a very disciplined rate strategy. So if you see a carrier that takes, modest annual increases with consistent adjustments without any major surprises, and while that might not be fun in the short term, if we're not in a birthday or anniversary rule state or some type of GI state, it means that carrier is actively managing their block, and that's a good thing. So let's compare that then to the opposite scenario. Let's use a carrier that shows a very low increase or flat marginal rates for multiple years, which sounds excellent. However, sometimes that should be a major warning sign, right? The carrier has one of the lowest premiums in the zip code, and they're also taking some of the lowest increases, especially trend increases. If they're not adjusting when they should be, and the rest of the entire market is, it's probably because they're falling behind their actual experience, or they're letting their loss ratios deteriorate or building pressure inside that block. And the catch-22 is when they do start to take increases, they won't be able to bring new people in because their premiums will show that their increases have been too high. Agents won't sell them, and the people that are on them that can pass underwriting will go somewhere else when they get inevitably these catch-up increases. And it seems that agents really like that type of business because instead of a 5%, 6%, or 7% trend adjustment, a member might see once that block closes a 20, 25, 30, 35. I saw a 53% adjustment in the state of Pennsylvania on their Plan G this year. So the key idea then is not all increases are created equal. There's a major difference between a proactive carrier who is controlling the adjustments that they take every year to protect the book of business that they currently have, and then a reactive carrier who brings in these catch-up corrections that, in some cases we're seeing multiple a year. Let's zoom out from this then even further. What actually is driving these increases over the long term? Because it's not just trend, it's the block's composition. So if a carrier's block starts to shift towards more open enrollment T65 business, or they're paying full comp on guaranteed issue business and they're getting a lot more inflow of GI and they're getting fewer underwritten lives, and over time the entire risk portfolio of that block has to change. Doesn't matter who the carrier is. And then the rates on that block have to follow unless the carrier wants to go insolvent. So when you see a carrier then with consistent moderate increases that doesn't have major volatility and has at least historically had predictable adjustments, that's not a bad thing. That's something worth celebrating. And in fact, I would say it's actually a sign of a disciplined carrier in the Medicare supplement business. In Medigap, the goal should not be to be the cheapest today. The goal should always be to be the most stable over time. Now, I say that out of this side of my mouth while also saying if you are in a GI state or anniversary or birthday rule state, in some cases, the cheapest makes the most sense because you can roll every year unless that rule gets removed from your state. But the carriers that look the lowest price early on always come with the biggest surprises over